first of all, thank you for joining Refining Purpose for this interview and taking the time out. How are you doing during this quarantine?
Like all of us, doing the best you can and hanging in there.
Yes, right. Okay, well, I'm going to introduce you. Everyone, this is Dr. CarolAnn Peterson, full-time lecturer, author. Kudos to you.
Thank you.
Public speaker, USC professor, advocate for domestic violence. You've done so much. Your resume is amazing. Can you explain your involvement and your passion for domestic violence and its victims?
Well, I am a survivor. And with that, at one time, I was a registered lobbyist and worked in Sacramento and also had done some work in Washington, D.C. But in working on the first spousal rape bill in the country, I told my story for the first time as a survivor, even though I was still a registered lobbyist. And we had a legislator who, after our testimony, said, "I'm really sorry that happened to you, but I don't believe a husband rapes a wife."
Oh,
And I was so appalled that I walked outside with the legislator at that time, state legislator Lucille Roy Ball Allard, who's now in Congress. And unwritten rule in being a lobbyist is you never talk about your legislation in the halls of the Capitol. But I was so angry. And I just looked at her and said, "He doesn't get it. He doesn't get it. He doesn't get it."
right.
So I came back to Los Angeles and called the Los Angeles County Domestic Violence Council and said, "What do you do?" And so they explained to me their purpose and everything. And within just a few months, they asked me to be chair of their legislation committee.
Oh, wow.
So working with them for 6 years in the Board of Supervisors, we were able to make major changes. Don't know if this would have been the field I would have chosen if it hadn't been for that encounter. And, sometimes the universe takes you in directions you never expect. And that was one of them for me.
Oh my gosh, definitely. So I can relate to you. My mom was actually a domestic violence survivor before she passed away. She actually was stabbed 6 inches away from her heart. And that was the reason why me and my sister was removed from her care. It was a trickling of events that led to it. So how do you think domestic violence plays into the foster care system? Because like a lot of children actually end up in foster care due to domestic violence. So what is your opinion on, honestly, because a lot of people don't know why children end up in foster care, and a lot of percentage of the time it's because of domestic abuse in the home, and the neighbor hears them fighting and then they call. What is your take on the statistics as far as domestic violence and how it incorporates with the foster children who actually end up in foster care due to it?
Well, it's the way the law is written, and I really hate the way the wording is for the law. But when Department of Children and Family Services or Child Protective Services gets involved, they see it as a failure of the mother to protect her children, which for me is blaming a victim for the actions of an abuser.
Right.
And
the abuser is never the victim.
And it means many times victims aren't going to make a phone call and ask for help because they know that there's a possibility their kids could be removed.
Right.
And sometimes it's for the best reasons, but at the same time, we're blaming victims.
Right.
And we need to do a better job of being able to assist victims to keep their kids. We have tried many times in California to change the law so that it's child endangerment because of the abuser. Right. And we have such a tough time changing that law. If that we could more appropriately keep kids and the non-abusing parent together and provide better services and more services, and you keep an intact family.
Right.
The problem I have with the foster care system is at the end, when kids age out, is that we aren't providing them the services they need to be prepared to go into the real world. So
True.
you get this ripple effect and this overlapping effect. And
Right.
we just need to do a better job for victims and their children.
I agree. I agree. I totally agree. I want to thank you personally for your work that you do for domestic violence victims, because without you, a lot of them would not have a voice or wouldn't be encouraged to even, speak up. And, you have gone up there, to be a lobbyist. You're among some of the highest people. And for you to spread your voice like that, thank you on my mother's behalf, on every domestic violence victim, behalf that would like to thank you but can't.
And that's why I do what I do, is I looked at the sense of where I am, whether it was being a lobbyist at USC or wherever.
Right.
I have the ability to say something and be an advocate for those victims who cannot.
Yeah, so true. Thank you so much. I want to know, what is it crucial for people to know, when it comes to not only domestic violence, but you've also played a part with the police department, which we will elaborate on. But what do you feel like is most important for people to know? I know we addressed, not blaming the victim. Aside from that, what is the domestic violence key fact that people really need to know? And, it sometimes can be a stigma. So is there one that you would clear up for us right now?
One is the fact that victims don't stay because they like it. Victims don't stay because they think that this is, just the end all and be all of a relationship. They stay for a lot of reasons. They stay for economics. They're cut off from family and friends. As I tell my students, we have to also look beyond it, looking and sounding like us. So you might have, excuse me, immigration issues, language issues,
Right.
cultural issues, religious issues. All are barriers that keep victims trapped. And trying to find a way out can be really daunting. And when you're trying to keep yourself and your kids alive, that extra step of getting out and overcoming those barriers can be really hard.
Yes, I understand. I totally do. My mom, when we were taken away, we actually lived on Skid Row downtown, and we landed in the Union Rescue Mission, and, well, needless to say, it didn't work out because we ended up getting taken away from the Cecil Hotel, and she actually didn't have the means to get back on her feet. And she was doing what she had to do, to provide for her kids. And it was a terrible situation where she was stabbed, and, we suffered from it. And she honestly, her life just, it kind of revolved around that, that one incident just took her life away. It's unfortunate. Yeah, I can go on and on. So that's why I appreciate you so much.
Well, and one of the things that people don't understand is that over 75% of victims and children who live on the street are there because of domestic violence. They think, oh, people are lazy, they don't want to get a job. They don't get the fact that there's life circumstances that put people on the streets, whether it's a mental health issue or whether it's domestic violence. People living on the street, for the most part, aren't there by choice.
Right. I totally agree with you there. So let's go on to who was your role model throughout your journey, and what advice did they give you that helped you become this force to be reckoned with?
My mother,
Oh,
she was a single mom. And, when you're a single mom raising a kid, whether it's 1, 3, or 5 or whatever, it's always difficult because you want to put a roof over their head, food on the table, give them an education. And she was always one of those who was a feminist before there was the term really used.
oh, wow.
And I mean, in the 60s, she was getting credit cards, she was buying a house. And I look back and I think, how did she do that when it wasn't really acceptable for women to be that independent?
Oh, wow.
But my mother always wondered why I was such a strong advocate, but she was my role model. She,
Instilled in you.
made inroads where I just had to sit back and watch and know that, that's who I wanted to be.
Yes, such a powerful woman. It's already instilled in you.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so of course, as we go in this road of life, and we're awesome people, sometimes we also have some not so awesome things happen. So what were some of your struggles along this journey?
Some of it is, sometimes not being believed that what you encounter in your life is really that hard or that difficult. And especially, as we talk more about culture and diversity, being a white woman in our society, that somehow you don't have problems, or your problems aren't that difficult. But when you get even a state legislator who doesn't believe that the abuse you suffered was really abuse, it makes it that much more difficult to sort of overcome. But with a strong mom, I always knew you get up every morning, you take that one step in front of you, you keep fighting. And I always look at friends who are survivors who have major health issues. And I think if they get up every morning and can do this, so can I.
Yeah.
So it's just that piece of keep going. My mother has passed away, but I know she's upstairs looking after me. There are days I see that helping hand and I know, my mother's nudging God, as I call it.
I love that. I love that. She's up there still working for you.
Yes.
And I'm pretty sure she's up there strong-willed, like, listen, God, this is what.
Yeah, I always say she's saying, God, okay, you're pushing her over the limit, give her a break.
A little bit. Yes.